legends of your people, I am called Omega.
Omega? I was to be the one to find and create the power source that would give us mastery over time itself.
Well, you succeeded, and are revered for it. All my life I've known of you and honored you as our greatest hero.
A hero? I should have been a god!
The bond is not complete.
Isn't it?
It's not permanent. It will fail. Revert to antimatter.
You're wrong, Doctor. Power and the greatness of Omega could have been yours. But no, your hatred of me.
We didn't hate you, Omega. Why couldn't you be content to survive as you were? Why?
What is it?
The Underverse is a world of legends, so Omega has become his own legend. He is the Mad God.
Hello and welcome back to the History of series. We have yet again another special episode in our series, this time going over the second recently returning villain, Omega, one of the most important in Time Lord history, only just before Rassilon for the top spot. So what is his story? Let's find out. Omega, whose original name was Palix, and Rassilon were born in an era of Gallifrey's history when the Gallifreyan civilization was turned outwards, perfecting more advanced forms of interstellar travel to guide the development of less advanced cultures and set themselves up as gods. Rassilon and Palix were among the only Gallifreyans who gave much thought to the future and destiny of Gallifrey. Born to the same great house, Palix had referred to Rassilon as his cousin. In their youth, the two became friends, though Rassilon was very dismissive towards his friend. Palix was left with the nickname Omega after he received the Omega grade for an essay he had written that explored the possibilities of increasing Gallifreyan power by exploding a star and harnessing the resulting energy for time travel. As the Omega grade was the lowest possible, Omega was uniquely the first person to ever receive it, with his teacher Luvis calling the plan madness and pure idiocy. Rassilon argued the new nickname, which he had embraced, gave Omega a reputation that made him known to the public. Rassilon and Omega became solar engineers, a respected class of scientists among Gallifreyans. While Rassilon dreamed of immortality, Omega, believing this to be a pipe dream, turned him over to the prospect of developing the more realistic time travel. According to one account, Omega was eager for their people to establish power over time itself, while Rassilon, like the other, was more cautious. However, Omega's own memories suggested that instead Rassilon was the one eager for this power, while Omega was more cautious. During the early years of their partnership, Omega and Rassilon developed a form of living metal called Validium. Accounts differ regarding the circumstances leading up to their early time travel experiments. According to most, the two were already members of the High Council when they carried out the experiments. Eventually, both would become beloved public heroes as the years went by. Per one account, the duo worked on the project for several years until they developed the final form of the plan to detonate a black hole and funnel its power back to Gallifrey, which they presented before the High Council. While initially dismissive, the Council relented when Tussen's cat spoke out in favour of the two engineers, and they received the funding they needed. Per this account, while Rassilon would continue on as a politician, Omega would continue on as an engineer, and became more popular among Gallifreyans. According to one of Omega's unreliable memories, Omega and Rassilon were only able to begin their experiments after Rassilon led a revolution to secure power on Gallifrey. Although he pleaded for Rassilon to stop it, his friend argued it was the only way to remove those who opposed their progress. Afterward, Rassilon became a politician, while Omega carried on as a scientist. The 11th Doctor later recounted that Rassilon had been essentially Omega's boss. By the time of his final experiment and death, Omega had married a Gallifreyan known as Patience. He wrote about the mysteries of the Tantalus Eye. With the help of the other, Omega and Rassilon enabled the people of Gallifrey to achieve time travel by using the Hand of Omega, a stellar manipulator which could make stars go supernova. In an abnormal state of history, it was said that two hands existed. According to Omega, development of the remote stellar manipulator required harnessing the power of 1,000 suns. A transmission from Anathema claimed that, before Omega had completed the hand, Rassilon had accidentally punched a hole into another plane of existence, the spiral Iskaroth. This allowed the great vampires to swarm into Gallifrey's universe and begin the Eternal War. According to this source, Omega was eventually able to plug the black hole with artificial worlds designed to resemble ordinary planets, although he warned Rassilon that surviving followers of the vampires may one day attack these barriers to again unleash them. When Rassilon decided they should return to Gallifrey to finish the stellar manipulation for use on a supernova, Omega muttered to himself that if someone drilled into the final artificial planet's core, they would unleash something dangerous, the planets being Earth, and the danger being the Iskoroth. This source may be unreliable, as it might have been influenced by faction paradox propaganda. Now studying stars and black holes in secret, Omega and a small team of Gallifreyans established a research station orbiting the heart of Messina. Omega and Rassilon intended to use the black hole to access the time vortex. Among his assistants was the Time Lady Caradis, whom he had grown fond of. Eventually, Omega succeeded in entering the vortex, protected by a specialized suit. However, the experiment was disrupted when a chronivore appeared, drawn to feed on Omega. His team managed to pull him back, but the creature followed into normal space. In a desperate move to escape, Omega materialized the station within the vortex, but the chronivore pursued them, feeding on the vortex energy surrounding the crew. After the creature killed Caradis, Omega lured it into a trap, exposing it to the raw radiation of the heart of Messina. He and the surviving crew then navigated the maelstrom and escaped. Before returning to Gallifrey, Omega delivered a eulogy for Caradis, vowing that he would rather sacrifice himself than risk another life in pursuit of his ambitions. After the hand was complete, Omega declared it a key to time that would allow them to impose their own order upon time to become its lords, with Rassilon eventually conceding it was a magnificent achievement. The other, meanwhile, warned that the hand could become a terrible weapon, and warned them to remember their people's errors with the minions, although Omega believed they had already learned from those mistakes. With the hand completed, it was with the power unleashed by a single supernova, or in subtly different accounts the detonation of a black hole, that Omega hoped to generate enough power to travel through time. As Gallifrey's galaxy had only one population 3 star at that time, they decided to sacrifice that one. The star, in an area known as the Sector of Forgotten Souls in the constellation of Ao, bore the name of Kaba, or Polyphelos. The Fifth Doctor once reflected that Omega had always been a victim of circumstance. According to most accounts, Omega was lost during the very same great work by which he granted Gallifrey the power to travel in time. The stasis halo of Omega's Starbreaker vessel, the Eurydice, was sabotaged, exposing it and the Starbreaker's crew to the fury of the black hole. There were several accounts concerning the details and reasons for the sabotage, though one Gallifreyan wrote that Omega had got his sums wrong and was simply not within a safe distance when the star exploded. At the centre of the explosion, Omega saw the original timeline shatter as the invention of time travel changed reality forever. Historical accounts depicted that Omega's assistant, Vandekirian, had sabotaged the mission on behalf of Rassilon. However, feeling guilty over his betrayal, he cut off his own hand as recompense. Omega did not accept it, and cut off his other hand, placing it in the hand of Omega, upon which the Eurydice was destroyed due to Vandekirian's actions. The hand was only named after Omega because Rassilon wanted to use his public image to boost his own popularity, reasoning that showering the fallen founder with praise would do better than doing so for the disliked Vandekirian. According to the Seventh Doctor, however, the hand of Omega was not literally a hand, but only a figurative nickname. In his own distorted memories after taking on some of the Fifth Doctor's biodata, Omega recalled that Vandekirian was at least partly responsible for the sabotage. He had discovered that detonating the star would jeopardize the existence of a race called the Scintillans, and when he realized what would happen, Vandekirian's guilt caused him to destroy his own hand, as its activation required his palm print. However, Omega cut off the man's other hand to activate it anyway, before killing Vandekirian himself. When Omega began to have these memories involving the Scintillans, he was filled with guilt, despite having tried to argue that the reward of time travel for Gallifrey had justified its means. However, the Doctor revealed that the history with the Scintillans was a corruption of his own memories, with the Doctor having been filled with guilt over accidentally killing the race himself while trying to rescue a Lerman colony. Omega happened to take on that guilt after taking on some of the Doctor's biodata. The Doctor reasoned that Omega had only incorporated it into the memories to explain Vandekirian's betrayal, even implying Omega had not killed Vandekirian as well. The Doctor also reasoned that Omega may have incorporated the story because the Founder wanted to believe his exile had a cause, something to blame, like an act of genocide, instead of merely being the result of a mistake. As for why Vandekirian betrayed Omega, the Doctor assumed he had indeed either sabotaged the mission on behalf of Rassilon, or he had just succumbed to madness. Although Rassilon publicly wept over Omega's death, the 11th Doctor appeared to believe the theory that Rassilon was behind the tragedy. Indeed, he later recounted to Alice Obifune that it was rumoured Omega's death had been arranged, with those who spread the rumour claiming Rassilon had ordered Omega's assistant to betray the engineer. According to other accounts, a man known as Fenris the Hellbringer sabotaged Omega's Starbreaker. This nearly meant that the initial Gallifreyan time travel experiments never came to pass, so the Time Lords would be erased before they came to be. However, Rassilon intervened, dispatching Fenris. Thus, although Omega was still lost, the time experiment succeeded. This account further suggested that Rassilon prevented the disaster from overtaking the other 3 Starbreakers before weeping over Omega's death. Most accounts suggested that Fenris had been an agent of the Order of the Black Sun, and acting deliberately, but according to one source, the man who caused Omega's death was a temporal tourist, who had gone back to Gallifrey's ancient history to witness the historic moment of Kaba's detonation. He was only given the rather melodramatic name of Fenris the Hellbringer in later retellings of the event, post-dating this almost immediate obliteration by Rassilon. In yet another account, Omega told K9 Mark I that he survived the event during which he granted the Gallifreyans the power of travel in time. Coasting on his fame and the debt he felt Gallifrey owed him, he had himself proclaimed Emperor. However, the other Time Lords plotted against him and managed to depose him. They attempted to destroy him with the very power of 1,000 suns he had harnessed for them, but they only succeeded in marooning him in a crimson bubble of time, a time trap, from which they believed he could never escape. Similarly, the 15th Doctor would later claim to the Rani that Omega had been an insane tyrant, leading to the other Time Lords deliberately bringing him down and imprisoning him in the Underverse. No matter how it happened, Omega was thus presumed dead. Most Gallifreyans, including the Doctor, grew up to revere and admire Omega as their greatest hero. The Hand of Omega had survived and returned to Gallifrey, where the First Doctor would later obtain it for himself. Like Rassilon, Omega became a legend amongst Gallifreyan society, while the third of their trio, the Other, was forgotten. However, Omega had actually survived the ordeal, being transported through the black hole into a universe made of antimatter. From his antimatter universe, Omega was able to watch as the invention of Gallifreyan time travel wiped out the original linear universe, replacing it with numerous palimpsest histories. Trapped, Omega shaped the universe by force of will and access to the black hole's singularity. He could even create simple life. However, radiation destroyed his original body. The gauntlets, armour and helmet he had designed to protect him now constituted his physical form. At first he shaped his new world into a paradise, but as the centuries rolled by he grew weary and depressed, feeling abandoned by his fellow Time Lords. The landscape came to reflect this, as it was shaped into a drab grey desert. The universe that had become his home was unstable, unable to exist without a powerful will to give it form. He was trapped and seemingly completely unable to escape. Shortly after the early Time Lords abandoned the planet Minyos, after setting themselves up as its gods, Omega was able to psychically reach out to Oxurgi, a minion revolutionary, and form a psychic bond with him, with Oxurgi worshipping him in secret as his god. Under Omega's directions, he created a matter converter which could open a gateway through the black hole, thus freeing Omega, if it was powered by a tremendous amount of negative psychic energy. To reach his target, Oxurgi had to create as much chaos and misery on Minyos as possible. When this suffering did not suffice, Omega suggested he take control of the nuclear arsenal left on Minyos by his people and destroy the planet. When Malika attempted to stop Oxurgi with the help of the mind wrangler Kirill, Omega poured more of his psychic power into Oxurgi's mind, helping him fend off Kirill's psychic attacks. Omega's universe was breached by the Eltralla, leading to a battle which resulted in Omega stowing away on the Eltralla as it left his universe, leading to Omega's involvement in greater events. After thousands of years alone in the void, Omega thought upon a plan of revenge. A captured Time Lord could be forced to take his place, and Omega could leave and wreak vengeance on Gallifrey. His plan was inspired by the Verdigris, who had travelled into the antimatter universe in an attempt to get the Third Doctor released from his exile on Earth. Using the black hole, he drained the power from the Time Lords to stop them interfering. He also sent an amorphous life form and other more humanoid servitors to find the exiled Third Doctor and take him into the black hole. The High Council, unable to send anyone to assist the Doctor, decided to have his second incarnation to help rectify matters, and his first incarnation to advise the two. Omega brought both the Third and Second Doctors into his domain, entry into which converted all matter into antimatter. When Omega removed his helmet to prepare for his departure, he discovered that the antimatter universe had completely dissolved his physical body. He could not leave his universe, as he only existed because his will insisted that he exist. Consumed by rage and despair, Omega swore to destroy all things. The dark side of his mind took the form of a demonic champion. The Doctors offered freedom to Omega. In actuality, the Second Doctor's recorder, which the Doctor's TARDIS had shielded from conversion into antimatter. The Doctors attempted to trick Omega into touching the recorder, but instead only infuriated him. When he lashed out, he knocked the force field generator to the floor, causing the recorder to make contact with it, creating a violent matter-antimatter explosion, which seemingly killed Omega by collapsing his world. Having survived his encounter with the Doctor, Omega plotted vengeance on the Time Lords. He learned how to capture spacecraft into his timeless realm. They appeared to disappear from the normal universe in a blink, due to no real time existing in his bubble of frozen, crimson time. A boundary between the bubble and the normal universe now existed in the form of a cloud of cosmic gas, seemingly intangible, whose movements Omega could direct from the inside. He thus intended to move the cloud nearer to Gallifrey once he had collected a big enough fleet and launch a surprise assault on the planet. Among the spacecraft he hijacked was the entire Rigelian 7th Fleet, the disappearance of which was investigated by K9 Mark I on behalf of Gallifrey. When K9 managed to enter Omega's realm, he personally greeted him, explaining his story to K9 and trying to convince the Hound that his actions were justified. However, deeming that Omega was utterly mad, K9 managed to retake control of his own spacecraft, the K-Nell, launching it at the rocket stores of Omega's flagship just as the Invisible Fleet was nearing Gallifrey. The flagship was destroyed in a colossal explosion, which seemingly killed Omega, freeing the captured ship from his control. By one account, Omega's next encounter with the Doctor, following the first Omega crisis, was with the 6th Doctor. By this time, he mastered the power of the Singularity, such that instead of the world of antimatter containing Omega, he contained it, and was able to exist in the matter universe in a body of the antimatter universe. The body was maintained by his will, and if his will faltered, it would destroy the matter universe. In 2054, the Fusion Energy Research Network, a research complex connected via space elevator to the Fern Space Lab, began running experiments on duplicating fusion reactions safely on Earth. At the same time, other technicians studied antimatter. The existence of these two studies attracted Omega, himself a solar engineer. In 2056, Omega encountered the 6th Doctor at the Space Lab and attempted to force him to give up the secrets of time travel and his TARDIS. The two were soon matched in a battle of will across all of time. Omega planned to get revenge on Gallifrey by trapping it in stasis, as they had done to him, and then subjugating the Time Lords. He planned to do this by causing the Fusion Energy Research Network complex to go nuclear, turning the Earth hotter than the Sun and giving him a power source to accomplish his plan. To gain the trust of the Fern staff, Omega stole the body of the Doctor and took control of the fusion tests. While some variations of this source indicated Omega was successful, that the Earth was destroyed, the Doctor killed or imprisoned, and Gallifrey enslaved, one specific account stated that with the help of the Time Lord Drax, K9 Mark III, and a human named Dinah, the Doctor was freed and Omega was defeated before the culmination of his plans. After some time, Omega's hatred against the Time Lords mellowed, and he came to seek a matter body merely to once more exist in the matter universe. Omega had gained control of the dimensional gateway known as the Arc of Infinity. Through the Arc he had a gateway between his own universe and the universe of matter, though he still had no physical form. Gaining mastery in the use of Ultra energy, Omega learned to manifest himself from the dimensional gateway into a spaceship made of Ultra stone, which could travel through the matter universe inside an antimatter conversion field. After learning that the One's personality was trapped in the sandbox, Omega planned to create a new body by using the One's mental stability and absorbing the energy of other prisoners. He also wanted to gather multiple Doctors to destroy the Doctor's timeline. He tricked the Master with a false Doctor biosignature, enslaved him, and merged the Master's first TARDIS with his spaceship. Omega attacked Miano 5, drawing in the 3rd Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith. To open the sandbox, Omega needed to destroy 3 beacons. The 1st and 2nd beacons were destroyed by his gel guards, attracting the 4th Doctor and an older Sarah Jane, the Rocket Men, and the Decayed Master. Omega took Edda Vane as his new servant, after being imprisoned by her mind. With the 3rd beacon's destruction, the sandbox opened on Zilliqa, but instead of the 1, it contained the 6, a force of chaos. Omega became trapped as the Doctor sealed Zilliqa off from the universe. Omega fought the Six using a circle of gel guards to manifest his true body. The battle ended when the two Sarah Janes touched, causing a shockwave that broke Omega's circle. The Six dragged Omega back into the sandbox, where Omega's mind created countless worlds for generations until the 11 reopened it. Omega regained access to his TARDIS and created a servant, the Ergon. Hedin of the High Council contacted Omega to help him. Together they planned for Omega to gain a matter body by bonding with another Time Lord using a biodata extract. On Earth at the same time, Omega sent the Ergon to survey the planet. It ended up in Perryvale, where it met Dorothy McShane working in a fast food restaurant. She didn't realise it was an alien and gave it some fries, which it took back to Omega. Omega was infuriated there was no salt on them. Hedin transmitted to Omega the biodata extract for the Doctor, by this time in his 5th incarnation. Omega established a base in the Earth city of Amsterdam, navigated the Doctor's TARDIS into the Ark, and began to link the Doctor's biodata with his own. The Doctor faced execution on Gallifrey to stop Omega's return, which was a key part of Omega's plan. He and Hedin rigged the execution to hide the Doctor and Omega in the Matrix, safe from Time Lord detection. Omega shifted the Ark to Gallifrey in order to gain control of the Matrix, and used its power to create a physical body for himself. The Doctor tracked him down and sabotaged his equipment in Amsterdam, forcing Omega to sidestep into the physical universe before the transfer was made stable. His new body, a replica of the Doctor's, began to decay and revert to antimatter. Thwarted and maddened by defeat, Omega willed the acceleration of his conversion to antimatter to destroy the Earth rather than to return to his purgatory, but he was destroyed by the Doctor using the Ergon's matter converter. Omega was recreated using the Doctor's biodata, which split his mind into both Omega and a Doctor persona, though the Doctor wasn't aware of Omega's presence. In Amsterdam, Omega snuck onto Professor Urticus's TARDIS, travelling with the company Jolly Chronolodays to the Sector of Forgotten Souls. He fell in love with Sentia, an employee, and confided his plans to return to the antimatter universe with her, where he had godlike power. During the trip, the Doctor persona met Sentia and actors Dayland and Tarpov. Tarpov, overcome by the Vandekirian persona left by Omega's psychic residue, tried to stop Omega's plan, but was stopped by Omega. Omega, fearing exposure, attempted to kill Tarpov, but was knocked out by a medical robot. Omega then revealed himself to Urticus and killed him. The Doctor persona contacted the Time Lords telepathically for help. Meanwhile, Sentia kidnapped Dayland to marry Omega, and Tarpov stowed away on the Eurydice. Tarpov warned that Omega's plans would destroy the Centillions, but Omega killed him. After seeing the footage of Urticus's death, the Doctor persona realised he was part of Omega's split personality, just as the real 5th Doctor arrived to help. Traumatised, Omega had flashbacks of his past and fled. The Doctor revealed that the Centillions weren't real, they were from his own past, which Omega had absorbed. Sentia, possessed by Vandekirian's mind, tried to pilot the Eurydice into the antimatter universe to trap Omega. As the Doctor and Dayland escaped, Omega was seemingly pulled back into the antimatter universe along with the Eurydice. Following the Time Lord genocide, the 15th Doctor acknowledged Omega in his contributions to the Gold Archive, noting that he had been sent back to the antimatter universe after the events in Amsterdam. Through the last Great Time War, Omega maintained his biodata connection with the Doctor established by his encounter with the 5th. When the question was asked on Trenzalore, Omega escaped the antimatter universe drawn out by his connection to the Doctor. Taking a foothold on Trenzalore, Omega assembled an army of Sontarans, equipping them with Gallifreyan technology such as transmat equipment and other devices. He planned to once again replace the 13th Doctor, sabotaging the Doctor's TARDIS and setting up beacons through time to triangulate and eventually collapse the Doctor's time stream. By subverting the Doctor's time stream, Omega planned to bring Gallifrey back under his rule. However, as a result of the 13th Doctor, River Song, me and Clara Oswald's intervention, this failed. Savar, coming from a point during the Doctor's time as a student, attempted to rescue Omega by flying his TARDIS into the event horizon of a black hole at a point in the future of the Time Lords, several billion years beyond the 20th century. Savar found his way into the antimatter universe and saw Omega as a vast chained god he called Om. After refusing to stay in the antimatter universe in Om's place, Savar fled, but Om grabbed at Savar's TARDIS and attempted to use it to escape, causing it to stretch itself into the structure known as the Needle, with the struggle creating the effect, a breach in space-time. As the Needle became a home to many in the far future, the breach slowly widened and Omega grew more powerful. When Patience was killed on a 26th century human colony planet, her dying body slowly faded out of existence in the Fifth Doctor's arms, as Omega used the effect to bring her into the antimatter universe. As Patience had once been his wife, Omega used his powers to restore her so that she could live with him, although from this point Patience existed as an antimatter creation sustained by his will. Living with Patience, Omega was able to have his own muscular, bearded antimatter body, although he would require a body made of matter to exist outside of his realm. By now, Omega had seen an infinity of palimpsest universes, seeing that all versions of history led to his imprisonment outside reality. Speaking with regard to the Doctor's multifaceted history, Omega stated, "There are an infinity of choices, an infinite number of Doctors, yet I am all the Omegas, I am the only one." At a time when the end of the universe neared and the Needle was nearly extinct of all life, the effect widened to the extent that it threatened the universe, growing beyond Omega's control. The effect altered the past, with Omega using his control to manipulate events to create the Infinity Doctor's reality, a version of history which would lead to Omega's escape. The Infinity Doctor came to the antimatter universe at the end of time, having created a duplicate of himself on the Needle to fool the Needle people. With the Doctor able to take his place, Omega took possession of the Doctor's duplicate and went back to Gallifrey in the Magistrate's TARDIS, forcing Lana, who had come to the Needle to rescue the Doctor, to come with him. He went to the Eye of Harmony and seized its singularity to become a god again in the matter universe, becoming transformed by the power into a vast warthog-like creature. He was confronted at the heart of the singularity by the Doctor, who convinced him the futility of such power. Omega decided to unmake the universe, so the Doctor brought his anti-singularity into contact with Omega's singularity, which restored the Eye to normal. As he had just made up the concept of an anti-singularity, the Doctor had no idea what had happened to Omega, suggesting he could be banished, sealed away, or dead. The Infinity Doctor's reality would become another palimpsest universe in the constant shifting of history, although consequences of its events seemed to still have occurred relative to the Eighth Doctor's present. In the post-war universe, an echo of the Master within the Eye of Harmony, which referred to itself as the Alpha and the Omega, had the same position of infinite control of a reality that Omega had with the effect, indicating that Omega's influence did not exist at this point for the Doctor. In the wake of the Doctor having roused the pantheon of the gods, through the 14th Doctor casting salt at the edge of the universe, the Rani took control of the newborn god of dreams, Desiderium, and planned to use him to break reality so she could retrieve Omega from the Underverse, referring to him as the one who is lost. She accomplished this by letting Conrad Clark use the infant god's power to create an Earth of his design, which incorporated the 15th Doctor. As she'd planned, the Wish World inevitably decayed, and the Doctor finally broke free of its influence, causing reality to break around London on May 24th, 2025. The Doctor heard the voice of Omega emanating from the breach. She eventually managed to open the tomb of Omega and break through into the Underverse, where she and the 15th Doctor believed the Time Lords had banished and bound him for his insanity. She planned to use his body as a race bank from which to rebuild a new race of Time Lords, so as to undo the genocide of the Time Lords which had left her and the Doctor cells sterile, even though they had survived it. When Omega emerged, he had turned into a corrupted skeletal monstrosity. Since the Underverse was a place of myths and legends, he had been transformed to fit the way he was remembered, as the Mad God. Wishing to consume the remaining Time Lords so as to grow stronger and evolve into a true god of time, the maddened Omega devoured the Rani's latest incarnation, though her past self escaped using her time ring. The Doctor then pushed Omega back through the portal by turning the power of the Vindicator, which the Rani had turned into an energy conduit to boost Desiderium's abilities, against Omega. Shortly thereafter, Ruby Sunday got control of Desiderium and wished the Wish World out of existence, reverting the Bone Palace to its true nature as the Doctor's TARDIS and erasing Omega's portal. For centuries on Gallifrey, the adherents of Om were a secret society that worshipped Om. During the presidency of Romana's third incarnation, Omega manipulated them to steal the hand of Omega from Gallifrey and use it to create a black hole. Omega then lured Toras and brought him in Ace's TARDIS into the antimatter universe. When he met Romana, he thought the Time Lord Society had fallen so low to allow a president from the House of Heartshaven. Possessing Toras's body, Omega took Ace's TARDIS and escaped the antimatter universe, knowing that it would allow him back on Gallifrey as it was known to the Celestial Intervention Agency. Romana sent Irving Braxiatel back in time to change history, so that Omega would never escape the antimatter universe, with him instructing her previous incarnation to preemptively arrest the adherents, setting history back on its correct course. And that is the story of Omega, the first true Time Lord either banished, lost, or sabotaged into a life of solitude, never to return into physical form. It's actually quite sad when you think about it. At the end of the day, Omega just wanted his race to become the most powerful beings in creation. He wanted them to have control over time and rule over everything, and in the end his ambition was ultimately his downfall. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, then consider leaving a like and subscribing down below, as it really helps out the channel. I have one series planned in the future that may be of interest to Faction Paradox fans, but that may be a while off yet. But, as always, thanks for watching.